What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Taste Like Music. It's Jason and Joe here. Album of the week, the series where we review albums selected by our patrons. There are some rules to this. They can't choose anything that's been rated by too many people. It's got to be 8 or less of us in the Patreon community. So we're going a little deep usually. This week we're going a little less deep. Somehow this was still eligible. We're talking about the first metal album of the season here on Album of the Week, Countdown to Extinction by Megadeth from 1992. This is a record that I have heard before. I allude to it from time to time on the channel, but I used to have be a little bit of a metalhead and had a metal phase in my life, and a big part of that metal phase was Megadeth, and I actually own this CD. One I'm pretty familiar with, although it's been a long time since I've listened to it, so kind of coming back after a long time away. For me, I would assume Joe's heard this as well. Yeah, I don't know how this was still available, still on the board, but good for views probably, so I'm glad they chose it.
Yeah, sort of, it should be assigned to all the metalheads out there. Maybe there's a dearth of metal lovers in our Discord, in our Patreon. So come on, come join us. I really like this album. I've heard it many, many times. I don't really like Rate Your Music, so I didn't rate it on there. But I was also surprised that not we have a pretty low bar. 8 people have to have rated an album or less for it to be eligible, or is it less than 8? I don't know. It doesn't matter. So our Norwegian friend Jens picked this one. And yeah, this is Megadeth's, this is, I think people consider it like their black album because it's when they went from thrash of something like Rest in Peace. And this is a little more mainstream, a little more radio friendly. And I use air quotes because it's still pretty thrashy and aggressive and hard. I still think it captures what Megadeth was before this album a lot better than, say, the Black Album captured what Metallica was before the Black Album. But this is, a play for radio and a mass audience, and it totally worked. It went to number 2 in 1992. It was a big hit, double platinum, embraced. I think it got good critical reviews. I don't think it alienated a lot of its fans, maybe the same way that the Black Album did for Metallica, although it brought in all the butt rock fans. But for me, this is like the perfect intersection of thrash and mainstream. Has all the things that make Megadeth great without like sounding like a completely different band. Like you still have the twin guitars of Mustaine and Friedman, killer riffs throughout, killer solos, maybe not quite as fast and just crazy as something like Tornado of Souls or Hangar 18. But still really good, really well written. It's just a little more melodic. There's a little more catchiness to some of these songs. Some of the riffs, Countdown to Extinction is a killer riff, Symphony of Destruction, obviously, and they sound like songs. Whereas in the past, some of their stuff was like a song to hold a killer solo. Like these feel like songs for song's sake, songs that'll, get lodged in your head, songs that you can really headbang to. There's no glaring weak spots here. I think some of their earlier albums had like a couple duds. I don't really think there's any duds on here. The big singles, Skin of My Teeth, Symphony of Destruction, Sweating Bullets are all really good. The lesser known tracks, High Speed Dirt, Ashes in Your Mouth, uh, great songs too. Interesting, some more dynamics here. The lyrics, I think, are pretty good for metal, not quite as good as 80s Metallica, but I don't think Mustaine embarrasses himself at all. He's pretty decent lyricist at this time, and people have a problem with his voice, but I think he's a really good, interesting singer. He's a little limited. He's got a little whininess to him. Can be a little comical sometimes, but I think the way he uses it has great effect, and he does things with his singing and his voice to kind of hide the deficiencies, like in Sweating Bullets. that one of a kind of cadence where he does like the talk singing and then the music comes in and then he does it again. Very unique, very cool. I know people have a problem with that, but I think that's a great example, a great way to do something interesting and different without being a phenomenal vocalist, but I think he uses it really well. The band's great. I love Dave Ellefson, killer bass player. Nick Menza is a really good drummer. Production's good. At least one of the better albums of the 90s, if not all time. I certainly prefer it to what Metallica was doing in the 90s. So uh, it's very close to 5 stars. It's probably like a really high 4.5, which I think I'll go with that for now. But if we do the 92 deep dive or the Megadeth discography, I reserve the right to bump it up to 5 stars. So great album, great example of thrash and metal in the 90s.
All right. Yeah. Like I said, I owned this CD back in the day, perhaps to the shock of some who watch this channel. But this is like for metal, this is like the production style that I like the most. I like there's a lot of top end on the kick. You get that kind of clicky kick drum sound. The bass is like really closely married to the guitars, kind of just like tucked into the guitars almost, where you can barely hear it on its own. Just kind of there thickening things up. Not a lot of low end. It's not like this big fat sound. It's really kind of like pointed and aggressive. Yeah, and there's a lot of high end on the bass guitar too. You can really hear that on Symphony of Destruction, where the guitars are dropping out like after every phrase of the riff, and the bass is chugging through those gaps. Um, yeah, just I like that like really bright high end metal sound. And I compared it to the Black Album, and I kind of A and B'd it, and the difference is pretty drastic. The Black Album, way more low end and way more reverb on the snare, especially. And this record is pretty dry, which I like. I don't like those big like cannon snare drum sounds. This is just like quick crack and then it's gone. And I like that. I think it works here. Even on, I went back and listened to the previous Megadeth record, and the drums on that are kind of like 70s rock drums. They sound kind of like warm and like rounder. They're not as pointed, and I don't know. I think they just get the sound of the band really right on this record. I agree with you. Some people don't like Mustaine's voice, but I think it really works for like what he's doing. Like I think he understands it first of all, so he knows how to use it in a way that works. He just like sounds totally crazed and like a madman, and for what he's doing, that's what you want. Like, yeah, I think it works great. There's some really funny parts too with his vocals. There's in Sweating Bullets, there's the part where he's like gritting his teeth. You can tell he's just like singing through his teeth when he sings. It gives me a migraine headache sinking down to your level. And then the next line, he kind of just like flips and he goes, "Yeah, I know. Just keep on thinking it's my fault." And he has this kind of like, to me, it sounds like what they based Chucky from the Rugrats on. And I think it's really funny. Uh, but I think there is like a good bit of humor in there that maybe isn't really that noticeable if you're not listening closely and paying attention. I think the band's playing is really tight, really groovy. I think there's some great solos, some memorable choruses, like you were saying, like there's like proper songs here. Symphony of Destruction and Sweating Bullets, especially, I think are great, like super memorable for metal songs, but not as commercially friendly as stuff on the Black Album. It's like you said, I agree. It's like the perfect intersection of thrash and like mainstream rock, and I think they nail it. I think Max Norman did a great job on the production. High Speed Dirt, after those two songs, are probably my third favorite on the record. I love the solo on that one, and yeah, just really strong. 4 stars for me.
Yeah, it's a good example of 90s metal and thrash and just hits all the right notes for me.
Yeah, I don't remember what was my number one Metallica.
Mm, Ride the Lightning? Was that
I don't
France or
know. I don't remember if I got to
might have been Justice for All? It's something weird, I think.
Well, it could have been a lot of things. I didn't get to 4 stars with Metallica, so yeah, I like this more than every Metallica album, which may shock some people, but uh, I might like every Megadeth album more than every. I don't.
You might take that back when you hear some of the
Well,
2010s.
that may be true, but I already know that I love Risk, which is considered their worst usually. So,
That's a discography dying to be done by us.
all right, well, let us know what you think of the record. Hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell. Like Joe said, if you're interested in Patreon, you can find a link to that in the video description. Also, links to all of our social media there as well. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next one.